What in the heck happened and led to your the moment to where you were exonerated?
At that time, back in May of 2003, the Dodgers, me being have those tickets would be crucial into proving my innocence.
It,
Almost sixty
yeah.
thousand seats in that stadium,
Mm.
and they're on my aisle. Throughout the game, my daughter kept asking me for sweets or ice cream, and come to this point, and we come back. I never saw cameras when we got there, but when we got back from the concession stands, they're blocking our aisle, and I'm like, how cool is this? They're filming here. Like, that would help me prove my innocence later while I'm fighting for my life.
Juan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Brody. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Can you walk me back through the day that you were accused and kind of what happened in that moment and what was like going through your mind when that happened when you were arrested at first?
Yeah, so leading up to that point of me being accused and arrested, like, this blindsided me. I had no idea it was coming. My brother was involved in another serious crime, and we were dealing with that at that point, some other things. I was arrested. It was for something that, I took the blame for my brother. So, there was a lot going on, but I never imagined, being arrested. And I saw a witness. So for my brother's preliminary hearing, that was around May. It was around, yeah, the month was May. And I went to his preliminary hearing, and he had a co-defendant. So I was watching two cases in one, and watching a witness to another murder that had nothing to do with my brother. Saw her testify, and we left that day. We actually got accused of going to intimidate the witness, which was ridiculous because I was with family and friends, and there was none of that. It was just there to support my brother, and we left that day just you know having witnessed some testimony, and 2 weeks later, that witness was murdered. So, we were just taken back. I saw it in the newspaper and everything. And, my friend who was with me there in the court was, worried because he's like, hey, remember they were accusing us of intimidating this witness. And I was like, you know what, that's ridiculous. Don't worry about it. We didn't do anything. So fast forward 3 months to August, and yeah, I was on my way to work, and a car had been following us. I had no idea. And they kind of blocked us off when we parked as I was getting dropped off to work. And I opened the door thinking that it was somebody wanting, to look for trouble. I didn't know what it was. I was with Alma and my daughter, my youngest daughter. So when I
Mm-hmm.
stepped out the door to see who this was, I was staring down the barrel of a gun,
Hmm.
which, I froze. And like, I just froze, and I was ordered to on the ground, and then just for a few minutes, hearing them speak, I go, these are cops, because they had no uniform, no anything, no nothing. I found out later it was like this deep, like a special unit that takes down very dangerous and violent people. So I got taken down. My dad saw this. Our neighbors at work saw this. Just, very humiliating. My daughter was crying in the back of the car,
Mm.
and I got taken down to the police station. And it wasn't about till 6 hours that they told me that I was being accused of killing a 16-year-old girl. My world turned upside down.
Yeah, I mean, that had to have hit you hard. Like, what did it feel like? Kind of like a bad dream or something at the time, or uh,
Oh,
how was your mind processing that? Like,
you know what? It just it from just having sort of a rough childhood. I don't know if that's crazy to say, but I the way that it happened, like, it was just like my mind is just from witnessing and experiencing like rough things, like, even though this was like one of the worst things possible, like, my mind was fighting it, like, this is not real, I guess, if that makes sense. Like, I didn't want to believe it. Like I just said, okay, this is obviously a huge error. You know, things will get cleared up, and you know what, my name will be cleared.
Right. And as time went on, like was there a moment like where it really hit you in the
Oh,
beginning?
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So when I was arrested, and then I spent like 2, 3 days at the city jail down in Van Nuys, California, and after I saw the judge, and I was told that what I was being accused of murder, you know, not only a regular murder, it was like a capital murder. And, you know, if found guilty, I would possibly be looking at the death sentence. That was like, you know, that like scared the living crap out of me. And that after that quick court hearing, I was taken down to the holding tanks, and you get driven down to the LA County Jail, and I got shackled from my hands to my waist to my feet. And I was the only one on the whole bus that way, and I was put in like in a single cell. So I was just right there. It hit me like, wow, this is really happening.
Wow, man. And what did they like go through an interrogation process and things like that?
Yeah, so when I was arrested and then put in the holding tank, like I said, they spent 6 hours. What they were doing is they were raiding my house, our business, Alma's house, and you know they were looking for the possible murder weapon or whatever type of evidence they could use against me. That's what was going on all that time. So when they finally pulled me out to tell me what I was being charged with, um, you know, they started asking me all these questions, and, you know, just trying to get me to confess to the crime. And they started showing me, I don't know if you know what a six pack is, but it's like a piece of paper with, you know, different people's faces on it. And they show that to victims or witnesses, and they show them and like, hey, do you see the person that committed this crime? So they showed me multiple photos of those, and they said that they had some that had my picture circled, and it was like little comments, both in English and Spanish, something like, you know, this is the guy I saw shoot my neighbor. And somebody, they had one in Spanish that said, you know, este es el que le disparó a la muchacha. Like, this is the guy who shot at the girl. And I was like, I couldn't believe it. It was way too much. Like, my mind was just like, just going in a million miles every which way.
Yeah, like I can't even imagine. I bet that you had a like a lot of time on your hands to be thinking about this. Like, did it kind of feel like you were losing your mind?
Uh, yeah, yeah, you can say that. It was just, you know, um, I'm a big believer in karma. And, you know, for the life of me, I couldn't figure out why this was happening. Like, I just, you know, as I was taking that trip when I got shackled, when I'm telling you, and I was being driven down to the LA County Jail, like I literally, as I was looking out on the freeway, because it's about a, I don't know, 20, 30 mile drive from Van Nuys, California to downtown LA. And I was just looking out on the streets and, you know, on the freeway and looking at different people and cars, and just like, it's like I saw my life playing throughout those scenes. And it was just, you know, I just couldn't wrap my head around what was going on.
How did you find any like coping strategies at that time, or like how did you even like get any sleep? I know as you said sleep was hard, but how did you even manage to get any sleep?
I really, honestly, Brody, I didn't. Like, believe it or not, I think for about the better part of 5, 6 months, I didn't get like real sleep. It was just more like my instincts took over. So once I stepped inside the jail, like my mindset was just like, just survive. Like, that's what was going on, because
Yeah.
in jail, like, they prey on weak people. So I knew that I just had to, you know, I had to do my best to, you know, put up a fight, just like, just, you know, not allow anyone to see or feel like what I felt, because I felt like, I felt everything. I felt, worry, stress, anger, fear, like every type of like negative feeling I felt.
And you mentioned that I mean LA County is a probably pretty rough place from what I understand. And uh, how did you worry about violence or like people, or did were you able to settle people down? And how did that look like? Did you ever have a threat of violence against you and stuff like that?
So when you get taken down to the county, you get you go through a processing process,
Hmm.
and what it is you're interviewed by the LA Sheriff's Department, run the county jail. So they have deputies at windows, and it's just like an interview. And they started asking me these crazy questions like, do you fear for your life? Do you have enemies? Do you have suicidal thoughts? And it was just like, and when that was going on, there was like a fight broke out behind me. So I
Hmm.
was like already like, wow, like, I hadn't even been there a day, and it was already, some inmate was acting up against the sheriff. They took him in the back and they carried him out. Like, and so when I finished that interview, the deputy asked me to give him my hand. I said, my hand? He goes, yeah. And he just wrote in a big black Sharpie, wrote 187 here on the top of my hand. And
Hmm.
that, is penal code for murder. And believe it or not, with that on my hand, the other inmates looked at me and they didn't even want to talk to me. Like
Yeah.
they were just like, like stay away from this guy.
Yeah.
And there was a big like just a big gang member, like just tatted from head to toe. He looked like a solid tank. And I saw him, I noticed looking at me, and I was like, oh man, like, am I already gonna get challenged already? And he just looked at me, he saw my hand, and he's like, hey. And I looked at him, and he's just like, they don't want you to go home, do they? Is what he told me. And I was like, I just like, shrugged it off. And, as I got taken into a dorm, which those dorms are only supposed to meant to house like 50 inmates, there was like probably about over 100 in there. Like it was just like overcrowded to the rim. It was just, there's bunks in there, but you had people like sleeping on the mattresses, just like, man, just horrible conditions, man. It's just, besides the violence and the racial tensions and all that, it was just like living conditions were just, it was like we're like caged animals in there. Like honestly, it's just, it's bad. But I was just, as I walked in, like that was, as bad as it sounds, is just that mark on my hand was like more like of a badge of respect to all these, inmates that are looking at
Right.
10, 20, life sentences.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. What was there a transitional point like where you felt the momentum shift, like when you were going through your case and waiting? Like how long did it take before like did you start thinking positive, or like how in the world did you mentally work through that, like and like have trust that things were going to turn out in a good way?
You know what? That was hard, because I want to say for the majority of the time I was there, I just saw darkness. Like that's all I saw was darkness, because
Mhm.
I couldn't figure out as the days went by. Like I'm like, wait a minute, how am I supposed to, I'm innocent, but how am I gonna make them see that? Like, how in the world am I gonna show this to the court system and to the world? But the person that helped me so much tremendously, and probably maybe the only person that was able to comfort me internally, was my mom.
Mhm.
So my mom, she's not educated. She's been, as we grew up as kids, she was ridiculed and, often, made fun of because, I think she only went to second grade. But my mom has a gift from God. And, she has a heart that pleases God. And, when my mom prays, and when she talks about it, it's like soothing. So when I would talk to her and call her and I would tell her, Mom, I can't believe this is happening. Like, what am I gonna do? And as cool and collected as could be, she would tell me that, that God was gonna see me through it. And she would give me scriptures to read over and over. And in church and in jail, like, they do give you a Bible. That's
Mhm.
probably one of your most powerful tools when you're put in such a position. It's just,
Mhm.
I read these scriptures, like specifically Psalm 23 and Psalm 91, which talks about God's protection. I just read those over and over and over, and just, I believe for the best. But there was many times that, when I wasn't talking to my mom, and the few friends that I became, that I trusted in there, and I would tell them that, they would just like look at me and they'd be like, first of all, like, how are you so calm? Like, how are you? You look like, I'm like, well, I'm innocent. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what am I gonna? So, but, hearing other people talk about it, it's like kind of like was not a good thing, because it would like just, demoralize me, because of how they would say, what, well, you have to do this and this has to be proven, and this is
Yeah.
not gonna work. And so, it was a constant struggle for sure.
I can imagine, man. Because that's the joke. That's the running joke, is everybody in there says they're innocent.
Yeah, yes.
But I actually being an innocent man in there, I can't imagine what that would have been like. Um, like a level of mental resilience most people would never understand. And was there a time when where you mentioned that you lost 20 pounds? Was it 20 pounds in there?
Yeah, so, one of the things in there that to try to keep my mind off what I was going through was, trying to eat, of course, make sure I ate, and then exercise.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was eating every day. It's not like I was, that person that, yeah, like I wasn't eating or anything. I was eating.
Yeah.
But one of my close friends that I made in there, you get transferred a lot. So they'll pull you out of this dorm, they'll take you up to Castaic and what's called Wayside. That's more like a prison structure there. And then, inside the jail, there's dorms and there's cells. So they're just, I don't know why they do that. I think it's, somebody said, is that they're able to charge more money to the county or whatever, to the state.
Yeah.
And so they constantly move people. So this person that I met, like in the beginning, he got moved, and I would run into him from time to time. But as I would run into him, he's like, hey man, what's wrong with you? I go, what do you mean? He goes, you're wasting away. I go, I'm wasting away. Like, I went in probably weighing about, like, I don't know, about 185. And this one day after he told me that, that just stuck with me. We were let out to like yard, which is basketball. There's
Yeah.
a pull-up bar. There's, can walk or whatever you want to do. And there was a scale there. So I walked on the scale, and I think I was like 165 or
Mm.
167. I couldn't believe it. But,
Yeah.
then after it clicked, like, the stress and the worry was literally eating me up. Like, I couldn't believe it. Like, the power of the mind is just like incredible. Like, when I think about that, it's just whatever you focus on. And, how could I not think about what I was going on? I tried my best not to, but it
Yeah.
was impossible, because this
Mhm.
was my life. This was my reality at the moment.
Did you visualize yourself becoming free?
I I didn't. I didn't, because I felt like I was fooling myself in the moment. Of course, in the back of my head, that was, the objective to get out of the situation. But, I would see people come in. There's people that come in and do like 2 weeks or like a month. And believe it or not, I saw people come in, leave, and come back. Like, I was like, oh man, I was like, come on, man, like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
and I had like, some people, have, whatever, $100,000 bail, $500,000 bail, $1 million bail. I had no bail. So
Hmm.
even if I was a billionaire, I couldn't get out.
Yeah.
So, I just tried my best not to think about these things. So I knew that I was in good hands, because, I had the greatest attorney in the world on my side, Todd Melnick, and I just, and like my mom said, I put my trust and faith and hope in God Almighty. And then I had my daughters that, that kept me going, that I knew that I had to fight, that I knew that I had to prove my innocence, but, I didn't visualize myself, free.
Got it. And what did that look like um, with like the DA and them trying to build this case against you, and you probably just had to sit there in silence, when they're basically accusing you of lies, essentially. Like, so they intentionally, from what I understand, they intentionally tried to put this on you, and their ego or whatever led them to continue to put it on you for quite some time, right?
Yes. Yeah, it was just probably the most infuriating thing I've ever been a part of in my life because, like you said, I would go to court and I would sit there and I'm listening to these people argue about my life and, and being that I'm innocent. And, that was probably the hardest part was not being able to speak up because I wanted to yell. I wanted to yell at the top of my
Right.
lungs, like I'm innocent, like,
Yeah.
what are you guys doing? And, as the court hearings, because I don't even know how many there were, like just a lot that I had to just, Todd, and in the beginning, like leading up to the preliminary hearing, it was just basically like 5 minutes. So you have to wake up really early from the county jail. You get on the bus, they take you to court. You wait there all day to go into court for like 5 minutes. Okay, Todd would like brief me on what was going on, and then all right, I'll see you next time. And then fast forward another 3 weeks, and on and on and on. But listening to these people, and I knew that they were all lies. Like it's just I it was maddening.
Yeah, I don't talk about this much in my own story, but in 2021, I actually had a third DUI.
Hmm.
I did my 60 days. I was put in there, for 210 days possibly, and upon my release, um, they said I tested positive for opioids and marijuana, and
Uh-huh.
and I did not for either of them.
Yeah.
And so I only get it to some very small extent, but
Hmm.
I definitely wasn't smoking. I definitely didn't have any opioids. And the ironic part is my probation officer made me go get a weed card here in Colorado. She said, go get the weed card, and then the other test came back and it was clean of opioids, and it still said I was positive for THC, but then I
Hmm.
was on a medical marijuana card. So
Oh man.
it's such a ironic, it was so ironic and stuff like that. So, um, you know, when it came to what are like some amazing like hidden blessings behind all this? Like, what did you learn about the power of the mind?
I didn't know what this word meant, but I think what that taught me was mental fortitude. Like just that, you can live through the worst of the worst and still come out and still, you know, choose to do, you choose to do what you want to do. I mean, it was, you know, like I tell people now that, your past doesn't, direct your future. Like it's just,
Mm.
I resilience, these words that I didn't, because I wasn't educated. I never graduated high school. So, these words like resilience and persistence and perseverance and just, little did I know that this, was building up inside of me. And it was, I was talking to someone the other day and, she was just telling me how, sometimes God has to take us through things so we can become the person we were meant to be. Like, whoa, like that just like blew me away, because it's like, wait a minute, like I could never have seen that back then. And if you would have told me that, I would have said you're crazy. But it had to take me going through that such a horrible experience to wake up the sleeping giant inside of me, that that you are strong, you are resilient, you are like just a warrior. Because that's how, man, I'm even getting goosebumps. Like, it was just I didn't know I had that inside of me, because growing up, my childhood wasn't, I grew up like feelings of just abandonment and fear and just lack of confidence, lack of self-esteem. But I kind of, when I went to jail, like, for some reason, well, I mean, not for some reason, but obviously those feelings started coming back, because it was just like, kind of like, almost, here we go again. You know what I mean? So it was just like familiar feelings that is just, and sadly negative feelings. But you know what? It built up inside of me resilience and, perseverance and mental fortitude. It's just, I would have never imagined that it had to take this in order for me to, bring that out of me.
I see that. I see that. And let's talk about the situation that led to your freedom, in case listeners may not know. Uh, the irony behind that. Can you just kind of walk through in your own words what in the heck happened and led to your the moment to where you were exonerated?
Yeah, so so at that time, back in May of 2003, the Dodgers, me being, have like, I think that's the one thing that I gravitated, always, like, even though I had a rough time growing up and all this stuff,
Hmm.
sports was the number one constant in my life, that I don't know, it comforted me. Like, it was always there. Like, I was able to cheer for my team. Like, they never left you. Like, you were just always there. Like, I felt like, I don't know, it's a part of me.
Yeah.
So this particular time in my life, the Atlanta Braves, I don't know if you're a baseball fan, but the Atlanta Braves had like this powerhouse team of Greg Maddux and John Smoltz and Glavine and all these, Chipper Jones and Andrew Jones and all these like
Yeah.
superstars. So the Dodgers, we had a few good players, but we weren't good at the time. Well, they were coming into town, and I picked out, it was a 3-game series, and I picked out the best game to buy them, and I try to pull them off as a as a Mother's Day gift.
Yeah.
So, but all mothers are like,
You just wanted to go yourself.
I just wanted to go to the game.
Yeah.
And so, I was excited. It was a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and the game was for Wednesday, the one that I bought, because it was the best. I thought it was the best matchup of the three because of the Hall of Fame pitchers.
Yeah.
Well, come Monday, and I had bought those tickets the week before. So come Monday morning, I got a call from one of our customers, and this great guy I deal with, Caesar. Uh, he would, I guess the vendors he worked with, he had a lot of contacts. So they would constantly give him tickets. So of their season tickets, corporate, whatever they had going on. And when he couldn't go, he would call me, because we became good friends. And he called me that Monday. He's like, "Hey, I got these tickets to the Atlanta Braves." He's like, "Do you want to go?" And I'm like, "Oh man, come on, Atlanta Braves." I go, "I'm gonna go to 2 games of these 3." Never
Yeah.
did I imagine that, you know, that that those tickets would be crucial into proving my innocence. And, had I only gone to Wednesdays, I would have been, maybe I wouldn't even be here talking to you, Brody,
Hmm.
because those tickets put me at Dodger Stadium with my daughter, with my cousin, and my friend. And I've been to so many Dodger games, and strictly as a fan, and I've never seen anything be filmed there. And, this day on our aisle, just think about that. That blows me away. There's
That's
like
insane. Like
almost
yeah.
60,000 seats in that stadium,
Mm.
and they're on my aisle. You know what I mean? Like, come on. I was given the tickets. I'm on the aisle. You know what I mean? Like, you tell me, there are no coincidences.
No.
I don't believe that. So, we ended up, throughout the game, my daughter kept asking me for sweets or ice cream, and I go, okay, let's go. We went mid game to, so I wouldn't miss the ending. And we go and come to this point, and we come back. I never saw cameras when we got there, but when we got back from the concession stands, they're blocking our aisle, and I'm like, how cool is this? They're filming here. Like, I thought in my mind, like, let me get on camera. I just, you know what I mean? Never
Yeah.
thinking that it would be like, just, I'd have to, that would help me prove my innocence later while I'm fighting for my life. So that was like a huge part. I thought when that happened and Todd found all that out, I thought
Yeah.
I'm a free man. Like, that's it. I'm
Right.
free.
Yeah, clearly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Todd, being the incredible lawyer he is, he's like, hey, this is time coded. I didn't know that, but film, I guess, TV productions and all that stuff, they time code all this stuff. And the last shot they had of me and my daughter was at 9:10. The murder took place like at 10:30. So, the prosecution, like, well, hold on, there's like an hour and a half here that I could have left and did the murder.
Right.
And so Todd's like, no, we need more. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So, he kept working and working, and he couldn't think of anything. And I reached a boiling point. Like, it was like maybe like 4 months in. And
Mhm.
I'm like, Todd, we're on the phone, and I blew up on him. I told him that my parents had paid him a lot of money, that maybe it wasn't a lot to him, but it was to us,
Yeah.
that I was on video, the night of the murder. I go, what else do we need? And I yelled at him.
Yeah.
And, I apologized later, but he's like, Juan, I understand you're frustrated, but, they're going to say that you had this time gap to, commit the crime. So we were on a three-way, and Alma, as the one that she mentioned, hey, well, I called him walking out of the stadium. And Todd was like, what? A phone call? Where? What's the number? Gave him my
Right.
number and everything. And Todd again went back to work, and he ended up finding out that that phone call, because of, and I'm just talking about it like super fast, but Todd had to go wall after wall, through wall after wall after wall, like court orders, judge orders, like, because all this stuff you cannot just access it. You need legal paperwork, and there's a process to look at this stuff. And
Right.
Todd did all this and found out that, yes, indeed, I had received a phone call at 10:11, walking out. I remember, because the game was it was a great game. It was 4-4 going into the ninth inning. We had one of the best closers in baseball, and he got rocked. They scored like 7 runs, and I'm like, oh, dude, let's get out of here.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
before we'll beat the crowd. And we walked out, and as I was walking out, Alma called me to say where I was. Well, that call still put me at Dodger Stadium, and Todd used that to to prove the video I was there, and then the phone call still showed that I was still in the stadium vicinity, while, according to the witnesses in the murder, from the murder, they had saw the shooter driving and circling around the block like an hour before. So there's no way that I could have been at two places at once. But when that came in, I wasn't still 100% sure. And but I felt confident, and from everything that Todd told me, I just, you know, I had my hopes up, and I was actually praying, the night before, and I was asking God to please give me a sign. I didn't get a sign. So I'm like, I was like, please just let everything go my way. And you know what, in court that day, and just to hear, the judge say, as hard as the prosecution wanted to contend that it was me, it was a one eye one eyewitness, and it was dark, and under traumatic, scenario, they cannot be reliable. They had no other evidence against me, and she ordered me free. And I was like, wow, like that was just like, I felt like the weight of the world off my shoulders, and I just, incredible.
Wow. Wow. I mean, what did that feel like? Like, can you walk us through how that felt? Like one more time?
Like, it was just, in court, it was, and then like again, it was like a buildup because I went into preliminary hearing December 17th, and it got continued to December 18th because it was like Todd put up this defense, and because he wanted to do something that is unheard of, especially in a murder case, and not only a regular murder case, it was a capital murder case. So, like 99.9% of the time, they don't need any evidence to, take you to trial, because it's like if you're sitting in court, you're probably the guy.
Yeah.
So Todd put up this affirmative defense, is what it's called. And he was going to bring all these witnesses, show the video, do all this stuff. Like, he put in an amazing performance. Just like Todd is like, wow, like what a godsend. And
Yeah.
it was basically Todd and I against the world. That's what it was. That's how I felt. And,
Yeah.
as the days went on, and then just the tricks of the DA was just like, not only like disheartening, it was just like so disappointing to know that this person, the LEPD too, I know it's not all of them, but the
Mhm.
people that were on my case, like, how can you sleep at night knowing that, this person, you have no evidence, but yet you're here, wanting to get this man the death penalty. And I remember watching a show, those like forensic files that come out late night. I was watching TV, and it was a homicide detective, and he said that the number one rule as a homicide detective, even if the evidence is slapping you in the face, like just glowing at you, still question it. Like, these people had zero evidence, and they're like, this is the guy. So, they used every trick that they could, and it was disappointing to see that it felt like a one-sided fight, because, as Todd tried to show and prove, like, just the shadiness that was going on, it felt like it, they were, everything favored them, and that was very disheartening. And Todd was he promised my daughter that he'd had me out by Christmas that year, because it was December 17th. It was like a week away, and they came up with a excuse that Todd didn't provide them our discovery, which he had no reason to give it to them, because it was a preliminary hearing. It was not trial. It was the preliminary hearing. So he had no reason or right to give it to them, because that was our evidence. Well, they made it out and made him give it to them. And then, because Christmas was 1 week away, the judge ordered a 2-week continuance that left me in jail for Christmas and New Year, and I wasn't home. So that just like, when I thought I was gonna go home, it took me back down. My family was sad. Todd was sad. Like, everybody was sad. It, like, they were getting away with it. So I got called back into court January 5th, the new year, and again it continued. And Todd was just, man, he was amazing. He was grilling the lead detective. He was, putting their the only eyewitness to the murder. Um, you know, Todd was just letting them have it, because it was just like so much. They were using like every trick to, if I can explain to you everything that went on, it was just like ridiculous. Like, you would not believe it. And but as the preliminary hearing continued, I felt confident, but I wasn't sure, because I was sitting in that courtroom with no evidence. So, you know what I mean? So I'm like, how am I supposed to, or how are they going to believe this if they have no evidence, but yet I'm still being here accused? But as it went on, and the evidence was shown both sides, and then it was closing our arguments. Todd, he made a statement as saying, like, it was, if it were not by the grace of God that Juan would have received tickets there that morning for this game, like, he'd probably be on his way to death row. And it's just like, I think I got that, like, I felt something inside me that I started tearing up, because I was like, wow, like, he's right. And, after, the court, it ended, the judge, it was up to the judge to make her final, her ruling. And I just waited and waited. And then when she started speaking, I had no idea what she was saying. Like, I didn't understand one word. And as she talked and talked, I remember I was sitting next to Todd. Todd was to my left. And he just like leaned over and said, "It's over." And I was just like, "What?" Like, I almost didn't believe it. And, what started out as an empty courtroom that day was like full, like jam packed, like over capacity. And when the judge made that ruling, like the audience started like clapping, like, which was crazy to me, and I just like, I put my head down, like Todd hugged me, and I was just like, I was, I couldn't believe it that I was gonna be a free man and head back home with my family.
What was the first thing you did first day out?
The first day out, it was like nighttime. I got let out like literally right before 6 p.m. And in January, it gets dark early. So I wanted, for 6 months that I was in there, like I wanted a soda, man. Like I wanted a Coke. And I had told my family as soon as we left the courtroom, I hugged everyone and everything. Todd left, and he disappeared like Batman. Like, he did his job and then he disappears. And I told they're like, "What do you want? We'll take you wherever you want. We will do whatever you want." And I'm like, "You know what? Please, can you guys give me a Coke?" And they took me to Carl's Jr. I think I went to Carl's Jr. and they got me like the biggest burger, and I got my Coke, and I went on my way. And my youngest daughter, Melissa, the one that was with me, she's the oldest, and Mariah was at daycare. So it was already late because I think daycare closed at 6, and it was already, I'm telling you, I got out right at 6. So I got my food and Coke, and then we drove right to daycare. And that was like a beautiful moment because the ladies that ran the daycare, we were like good friends. Of course, they watched our daughters, and she had saw me in the news and what was going on. And she told Alma, like, "How is this possible? I don't believe it. Juan is such a," and she's like, "Yeah, they're falsely accusing him." And she's like, "Oh, well, she was praying for me." Just very nice ladies. And that day I walked in and they had like a glass, it was a door with a glass window. And I remember I walked in and the lady was straight ahead and she saw me and she's like just like, couldn't believe that I was out. And my daughter, of course, because we were late, was the only one, and she was sitting like in the center of the room, of the playroom. And I just looked at her, and I opened the door and I walked up to her, and I'm just like staring down and she's playing. And I just remember like tapping her on the shoulder, and she looked up and she was like, she's like, "Dad." And oh man, like that was like such a beautiful moment that I'll never forget. And I picked her up and I hugged her, and just like just a beautiful moment there. And then I drove to my parents' house, and even as we parked in the driveway and as we're walking in, I could hear my mom crying because my mom is like, she went through trauma as a child and she has like a fear of heights. She can't get on elevators. She can't fly. So my mom, she didn't attend my court hearings. And, she was just like so happy. And we all got on our knees there and just thank God. And, we cried it out. It was just it's a beautiful moment. But that was my night. And then I went home with my kids.
God, amazing. And how have you found the energy within you, or have you found the energy within you to like start to forgive the DA and the prosecutors and all of that bullshit,
You know what, man? My mom taught me that, you know, forgiveness is probably one of the most important things that a person can do in life. And I kind of talked about that in Secret Knock. It was just, so many people, sadly, and I'm talking about from like, I have family and friends that they cannot forgive a person for whatever reason they did. And I have an uncle that, the story's too long to tell, but he was wrong. He was taken care of from my dad and his brothers and got put through school. But, he was, he didn't do things right. Like, nobody's perfect. He didn't do things right. But, he left Mexico and, he just refused to apologize to anyone. And I saw it with my own eyes. Like, my uncle, out of just, I don't know, whatever he was holding on inside, uh, his health just deteriorated.
Mm.
The doctors don't know what's wrong with him. They cannot find any tests on him. And it's just like, I think about that, and it's just like, forgiveness, I say, is like, I'm sorry, like hate is like poison.
Hmm.
And it's just, it eats you up. It's just, it's just, it's such a horrible feeling. So when so many people, tell me, how could you, you got to do something, like, F those guys, and you know what? And
Yeah.
I just, I can't live like that. Like, I pray to God that I don't want an ounce or drop of hate in me. And I don't hold anything against them. Like, I'll never agree to what they did. And I forgave them, not for them, but for me. You know what I mean? And because that's what forgiveness is. You're not condoning what they did. It's just, you're setting yourself free, and you feel lighter. You really do. And it's just a wonderful feeling to not have to live weighted down. You know what I mean? Life is hard as it is already. So,
Mm.
any extra weight on you, it holds you back. It's just, but to answer your question, I forgave them a long time ago. I couldn't live with that with, I just couldn't.
Well, you just wrote a book, and congratulations on that, as we spoke about before. How was it writing the book, and what can you tell people about the book, and what's all involved in that wonderful process?
Man, so yeah, so when the documentary premiered like 8 years ago, I can't believe it. 8 years ago, in 7 years ago. It was, I wasn't sure. I didn't want to do the documentary, to be honest with you, Brody.
Yeah, yeah,
Todd was the one that was like, "Come on, please, this will bring me more clients." And man, I love that guy. So I was like, "Oh,
yeah,
all right, I'll do it." He only saved my life. I mean,
yeah.
so I was like, okay, I'll do it. And never did I ever imagine that uh, we would receive like messages from all over the world, places that I never even heard of. There are people that are inviting me to come visit, and have friends all over the world now. And it's just like incredible, like all positive messages. And when I tell you all, I'm saying all. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's just crazy to me. The documentary was Emmy nominated. I attended the Emmy those awards in New York at the Lincoln Center. That was incredible.
Yeah.
And just, they were trying to get it nominated for the Oscars, but it didn't work out. But people would message me all the time, like, "Hey, do something else, make a movie." Or I'm like, "Well, I'm not an actor." Like, it's just, they're like, "Oh, you gotta do something." And I'm like,
Yeah,
"Well,
yeah.
I've never been in showbiz. I don't have a manager. I've never done any of that stuff." So, I was like, well, thinking and thinking. I got so many requests, and I'm like, "Well, what can I do?" And I'm like, "Well, I guess I could write a book." And I told them, and some people were like, "Yeah, write a book." So this was, probably, when I started the book, Brody, in the pandemic. I had
Oh,
nothing to
really?
do, and I started writing in the pandemic. Really, like, I was like, "All right, here we go."
Yeah.
And I actually caught COVID, and I got really sick. I thought I was gonna die. Like, I got really sick, and so it kind of like put on pause, because I was like, my life, like, for that 1 year was just like bad. And
Yeah.
anyways, as things got better, thank God, I just continued writing, and then I started. I finally I applied to Cal State Northridge from that university to
Yeah.
from never graduating high school. I got my GED, I got my associate's degree, and then I finally made it to CSUN, Cal State University Northridge. So I had started school in 2022, but little by little, as I was, had time, and I had to, writing a book is just the effort and time you put into it. So, I just wrote, and the more I wrote and the more I saw, I would read it to my daughters and to my family, and they're like, wow, that's really good and it's really interesting. So, it was just a long process that, I can't almost believe that we're at the finish line now. And it's an amazing feeling, like we were talking about. And this book is just, somebody pointed out to me, oh, one of the writers that's helping me like organize, because I just wrote. I have like 45,000 words, and he's helping me organize them into chapters. He told me, the documentary, and I had never thought about this. He goes, the documentary, people don't know about you. What it is it's everyone who helped you to prove your innocence. And I'm like, you're right. So it's like this book is basically my story to the world of who I am, and what I've gone through, and just um my purpose of the book is, I think, more than anything, to the people who have ever been dismissed or counted out, or to any kid that thought that he couldn't amount to anything. This book is for them. It's just, it's a story of perseverance, and just hope and faith. And it's just a reminder that your past doesn't, is not, won't dictate your future. And um it's just a bunch of from childhood to the stories that led up to me being falsely accused of this murder, and just like all the incredible things that came from this. So I heard a video not too long ago of somebody was talking, and the guy said that if you think about it, think about all the negative things that have happened in your life, and if you have the right perspective, how the beautiful things that came from that. And I'm like, wow, like, I would have never imagined that sitting there in a jail cell looking at a possible death sentence, that I would come out, get my GED, get my associate degree, graduate in business management from, with a bachelor's degree, and now to an author, and write a book. Like, that just blows me away, you know?
Napoleon Hill, he said, every adversity, every trauma, every bad thing that ever happens to you in your life has the seeds of an equal or greater benefit. And I always
Yes,
think about that. And it's so
yes,
true. It's so true. So I,
100%.
I'm gonna make sure to put the info for the book release in the show notes. And
Yeah.
I guess I just want to leave it on this one, Juan, is like what do you aspire to do, or what do you want your place to be in the world, and what mission are you following now?
That's a great question. So, it's crazy that, when I was released and from the murder case, I didn't want to talk about this. Like, I would never be able to sit here and talk to you about it, because I wanted to erase that from my memory. Like, I didn't, from existence, like that never happened.
Yeah.
Now I know that I have to tell my story and use it to inspire or motivate or what have you, to the world, and messages that I have received over the years, of just like people that never believed in a higher power now believe, or that they want to be better fathers, or just incredible to hear people tell me, like, man, like strangers. I had a guy, I was at a Jersey Mike's and I was getting lunch. He recognized me and he asked me if he could give me a hug. I was like, everyone is like in line. It was like lunchtime's a long line. And I'm like, yeah. And he told me he had two kids, and because of me, that he was gonna be a great father and stay out of trouble. You know what that makes me feel, man? And it's just like, Greg, I wasn't supposed to be at Secret Knock. I met Greg, I met Greg 7 months ago. And, I told him I was trying to write a book, but I was stuck. He's like, I'm going to help you. I go, if you willing to take a chance on me? And then, he calls me up. He's like, hey, I'm going to invite you to Secret Knock. I'm like, what's that? And, he's like, tell me. And he's like, yeah, you're going to love it. It's just like-minded people that, just want to better themselves and grow. And like, wow. And, to receive that, that welcoming or just the feedback from people was incredible. So people tell me, you should be a speaker, motivational speaker. I'm like, okay. Or like, you should, make a movie, which, maybe that'll come from this book, or a series or something, since the series are more popular. So to answer your question, it's just, I'm not 100% sure yet. But I know that everything will come at the right time. Like it's always been in my life. Like I cannot rush things because it's not on my timeline. It's just not. And I know it's not like until the master says you are ready, will you be ready? So, I've spoken at schools, kids to me, and, the importance of education and health and helping people to me means everything. So whatever I can do to, make impact the world or make it a better place of whatever it is that I'm doing, I will do that. But for like a specific role, I don't. I have a couple of ideas now that I graduated from Cal State Northridge. Like I want to start a couple businesses. This book is gonna have me, busy pretty much for this rest of the year with, with doing promoting it and podcasts and just whatever else is to come. And we'll see. But I hope you can. I'd like to come back and once the book is officially released, and and we could talk some more.
Let's do it. I would love that one. It's been such an awesome, amazing podcast. It's been an honor on my side. So,
oh man, thank you, brother. Thank you, man.
And everybody have a beautiful rest of the day.
Thank you, man. Take care.